Richard Alam. I teach biology. I'm from Maranjao Junior School. Welcome everyone. Keep on following this program. If you have your questions, just send them on the number there below so that we learn together. Welcome to this class. Today we are going to learn about respiration. Now, what is respiration? Most students have a lot of challenge in differentiating between respiration and gaseous exchange. And I'm just going to define respiration. Then I give us a general equation that describes the whole process. So respiration is a chemical process in which food substance is broken down in living cells to release energy, carbon dioxide, and water. So let's write the equation together. So we have glucose, then plus oxygen, then we get energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Now, from this equation, it is very clear that when you take in any substrate that is energy-rich food substance, it is clear that the food will be broken down in presence of oxygen to get, to get energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And the energy released during respiration is released in form of heat. And at the same time, the energy released in form of heat is released in beats. Respiration produces a lot of energy in body cells, and therefore the energy is released in small amounts periodically to avoid burning the cells. Now, the next concept that may challenge a student from this equation is another concept called photosynthesis. Because as you can see from this equation, it is clear that oxygen required during respiration is obtained from respiration. And therefore, carbon dioxide is being produced as a byproduct. Now, how is respiration important? What are the significance of energy produced during respiration? As you continue tackling this question, kindly send us your question in the number provided in the screen there below. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. Keep on following us. Now, significance of respiration. As you can see, respiration is very important because the energy therein obtained is used in contraction of muscles. Number 2, we have transmission of nerve impulses. Then the energy is also used in growth and development. The energy is also used in growth and development. Apart from that, the energy in transmission of nerve impulses, the energy is required in transmission of nerve impulses. Then production, functioning of body organs such as brain requires energy. Then active uptake of nutrients. Then digestion of food in processes such as peristalsis, digestion of food require energy. Now that's the introduction that we have. Then I would like us to move to to the next phase of this presentation, where we are going to discuss the various types of respiration. But before then, we must understand, where does respiration occur? Respiration takes place in mitochondrion, which is a cell organelle. And therefore, you will realize that cells requiring more energy have numerous mitochondria to provide energy for the various activities. For example, kidney cells require more energy. Sperm cells require more energy for propulsion towards the ovum. And the skeletal muscle in human body also require more energy. Therefore, it has numerous mitochondria to provide more energy for contraction and relaxation of muscles that cause movement. Now, let's see and discuss the structure of mitochondrion so that we are able to understand why mitochondrion is specialized to carry out respiration and not any other organelle in plants or animals. Now let's see the structure of mitochondrion. This is a simple structure of mitochondrion. As you can see, we have this structure here as the mitochondrion. Let's draw it quickly. Meanwhile, keep following us. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. Keep following us. Keep sending your comments. Let's keep learning together. Now, let's realize this is cristae and this is the matrix. And for students, when you make your drawing, you give us the labeling on the right-hand side. This is the outer membrane. And we have the inner membrane, which is folded into cristae. Now, the function of this organelle is site for respiration. That is the function of this organelle. But we need to understand the specialization of this organelle and the adaptations. What makes it to be suitable to carry out this function? Now, we have two major adaptations of mitochondrion to its function. The first adaptation is that the inner membrane, as you can see, is highly folded into cristae to increase the surface area for attachment of respiratory enzymes. Most students are not always keen when answering questions concerning the adaptations of mitochondrion to its function. When you give the point, the inner membrane is greatly folded into cristae, most students will say the inner membrane is greatly folded to increase the surface area for respiration, which is not correct. So the correct point is that the inner membrane is greatly folded into cristae to increase the surface area for attachment of respiratory enzymes. That's correct. The next adaptation, which is the second and the last adaptation of this very important organelle in human body or in living organisms, is the fact that the fluid-filled matrix, the mitochondrion has a fluid-filled matrix containing numerous respiratory enzymes that catalyze the rate of respiratory reactions. Now, those are two major adaptations of the mitochondrion that make it to be specialized and adapted to carry out respiration. Now, that's a good concept that you have understood. Keep sending your questions. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. Keep following us in YouTube, in Twitter, and in every part so that we continue learning together. Now, I would like us to move, and now that we have built the foundation, the definition, and the site, I now want us to advance to understand the types of respiration. But before that, maybe I will define another term for the student so that the students are able to understand. There's another term that is generally confused with respiration, and this term here is gaseous exchange. Now, gaseous exchange is a physical process. It's a physical process in which carbon dioxide and oxygen is passed across the respiratory surface. It's passed across the respiratory surface. So that is gaseous exchange. It is a physical process in which carbon dioxide and oxygen is passed across the respiratory surface. Now, let's now discuss, let's see what happens when food is burnt. Let's have this practical activity. We want to see what happens when the food is burnt. Now, in this diagram, I'm presenting here what happens when food is burnt. What is the aim of the experiment? The aim of the experiment that we are going to discuss is to investigate what gas is given off when food is burnt. And we are going to confirm that from our first equation. Then we have the requirements. As you can see, we have the retort stand, the boiling tube, calcium hydroxide solution that we are going to use to confirm the gas that is produced. So, in the procedure, place some food in a dry boiling tube, then hold the test tube containing the food, sample horizontally, pour a little calcium hydroxide solution in the lime water and in another test tube to support it. Then using the delivery tube connected to the boiling tube, the test tube, ensuring that the free end of the delivery tube dips into calcium hydroxide solution. Now, from that experiment, let's project the next phase so that we are able to see what happens. The diagram, we have when food is burnt. Yeah, this is the diagram. We can see the source of heat. So when food is burnt and we have calcium hydroxide, from our general equation, we realize that when food is broken down, then energy is released, then we have carbon dioxide and water. Now, what will happen? At the end of the experiment, when the food is broken down, the carbon dioxide released. Now, let's now move to the observation. Let's move to the observation. What will we expect at the end of the experiment? The observation, we are going to move to the observation and conclusion. When food is burnt, carbon dioxide is released. Carbon dioxide is released. Now, the carbon dioxide released, as we want to confirm carbon dioxide, the test for carbon dioxide, if it is carbon dioxide. And by this stage, as a student, you should be able to know the test for different gases. For example, oxygen relights a glowing splint. Now, what is the test for carbon dioxide? Now, as we move to the next slide, or the next presentation, we are going to realize that carbon dioxide, the observation, next, the observation from this experiment, we will be able to observe that the calcium hydroxide forms a white precipitate. And you must write forms a white precipitate in full. In biology, you must avoid abbreviations. Only use known abbreviations. So in this case, the observation is calcium hydroxide forms a white precipitate, full stop. Then let's give the explanation. What happens? Why does the calcium hydroxide forms a white precipitate? When food is burnt, carbon dioxide is produced. Then carbon dioxide reacts with calcium hydroxide to form. Carbon dioxide reacts with calcium hydroxide to form a white precipitate. At the same time, as a result of respiration, water is also produced. Now, water vapor produced accumulate on the inner upper side of the test tube, which turns anhydrous cobalt-2 chloride paper pink. Now, that brings us to an end of that experiment, and we want to move to the next part or the next phase of the presentation. After having discussed that particular experiment in a very simple manner. Meanwhile, keep following us. This is Elimu Live. The show is Elimu Live at KUTV. Keep following us on YouTube and all our platforms. Keep sending your questions. We are here to assist you. I'm Mr. Richard Alam from Maranjao Junior School. Let's continue. Now, I would like us to proceed with this topic, respiration, so that at the end of it all, our learners are able to perform well in the national examinations. Now, next, let's see the types of respiration. Types of respiration. Now, types of respiration, and respiration is mainly, there are two main types of respiration. And it is very important for the learner to understand that the types of respiration are classified based on one factor, and the factor is presence or absence of oxygen. Presence or absence of oxygen. Based on that, we have two types of respiration. The first one is aerobic respiration, and we have the next one is anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Now, as I had stated previously, that the basis of classification of respiration is based on, it's based on the presence or absence of oxygen. Now, aerobic respiration is the process in which food substance, such as glucose, is broken down in presence of oxygen in tissues to release energy, carbon dioxide, and water. So a complete process of respiration will give us energy, carbon dioxide, and water. As I had already stated, the energy is released in form of heat, and it is released in bits periodically to avoid burning the cells. So that is the first type of respiration, that is called aerobic respiration. Occurs in presence of oxygen and the food substance is completely broken down into energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Now let's see the next type of respiration, that is anaerobic respiration. Occurs in absence of oxygen only. But aerobic respiration, as you have defined, it occurs in the presence and absence of oxygen. And we are going to understand and elaborate more when we describe the entire process of respiration. Now, having classified that, let's move to the process of respiration. The process of respiration. Process of respiration. Process of respiration. Most students have a challenge in describing the process of respiration. But today, you are very lucky that we are going to simplify and clear out the confusion from your mind, and going forward, you are going to be performing nicely. Now, the process of respiration. Respiration occurs in two phases. Respiration occurs in two phases. And as a good student, or if you want to understand respiration, I always teach one part of respiration. That is aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. I know you are wondering why I'm saying that I only teach aerobic respiration. Now, aerobic respiration occurs in two phases. Now, when we describe aerobic respiration, we begin with the first phase. So we have phases. We have the first phase, and the first phase is glycolysis. The first phase is glycolysis. Now, what is glycolysis? Glycolysis is the first stage of respiration which occurs in the cytoplasm. And a possible question that a student is likely to answer from that definition is, where does the process glycolysis takes place? Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm, as we have stated. Now, what happens in during the process of glycolysis? Glucose is partially broken down. Glucose is partially broken down. So we have glucose, then we partially break down the glucose into pyruvic acid, because food substance is being broken down in the absence of oxygen, and therefore glucose is partially broken down into pyruvic acid. If oxygen is not available in glycolysis, then pyruvic acid is further broken down. Pyruvic acid is further broken down in plants. Pyruvic acid is further broken down in plants, so that we obtain the end products in plants. We have ethanol, carbon dioxide, ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. So it is very important to understand how respiration begins, the initial stage, so that this process here is glycolysis. It's the initial stage of respiration that occurs in the absence of oxygen, and glucose is partially broken down into pyruvic acid. Then pyruvic acid is further broken down in plants to obtain ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. And in animals, we obtain lactic acid and energy. Now, from here, as a student, you should be able to understand that you can be asked, name the end products of anaerobic respiration, one, in plants. Now, the question is very simple, but very technical. Because we have more than one product, ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Now, one student will write ethanol. You know, students always write one of the points. So you feel ethanol is the main product. But the process takes place at the same time. The process, so you give the product as a unit. So the correct response is energy, is ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. That is the end product. So when you give one product, then that is not correct. It is like when you are boiling maize and beans together so that you can prepare githeri and eat. When you start boiling at the same point, after sometimes 2 hours, 3 hours, when the githeri is ready, you cannot say that it is only maize that you are boiling, but all of them, you are boiling them at the same time, and therefore you expect that the food will be well cooked. So that is why you are supposed to give ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy, because as the process continues, the products are produced simultaneously. Keep following us. This is Elimu Live from KUTV. Keep sending your questions, keep sending your comments. Let us learn together. Now, in animals also, the same trend applies. The end product is lactic acid and energy. Lactic acid and energy. Now, as a general comment, when you try to do some exercise, maybe you are running, you are in a strenuous exercise, like my friend Omanyala, when he runs 100 meters, you know, he burns a lot of energy, and sometimes when you try to perform a strenuous exercise, you will have the following observations. One, you will be experiencing your chest is burning, then you will be experiencing muscle pulls or muscle cramps. Now what happened? During a strenuous exercise, oxygen intake in the body reduces. Now when the oxygen reduces, therefore, the body respires anaerobically, producing lactic acid, which is very poisonous to the body, and that is what causes muscle cramps and muscle pull. Therefore, you will realize that after a strenuous exercise, the following are the main observation. One, deeper and faster breathing. Now, as a student, you can be asked, explain why after a serious or a strenuous exercise, an athlete or the person participating breathes faster and very deep. Now, the explanation is to supply more oxygen to body tissues to completely oxidize lactic acid to energy, carbon dioxide, and water. which are less harmful to the body. So, as we want to move to before we move to the differences between glycolysis and Krebs cycle, let me explain another reason that you'll observe after strenuous exercise is the increase in heartbeat. Now, why does your heartbeat increase, or what makes your heartbeat to increase after strenuous exercise? The heartbeat increases to transport lactic acid faster to the liver for detoxification. Now, those are two major reasons why the lactic acid, why heartbeat increases, or why after strenuous exercise the rate of heartbeat increases. Now, up to that concept, you have now understood what is glycolysis. Now, when oxygen is available during respiration, then pyruvic acid goes to another step, and the next step here is a Krebs cycle. Now, Krebs cycle, in Krebs cycle, it is an enzyme-controlled reaction that occurs in the matrix of mitochondria. Now, what happens to pyruvic in the Krebs cycle, pyruvic acid? In the Krebs cycle, because oxygen is available in adequate amount, then the pyruvic acid is broken down to energy, that is energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And energy in form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. So that is what happens. So generally, this is the summary of the process of respiration. So when you want to describe the process of respiration, it's glucose broken down partially into pyruvic acid, that is in the absence of oxygen, to give us pyruvic acid, which is further broken down in plants to give us ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. And then in animals, you have lactic acid and energy. This first line represents the first phase, that is glycolysis. And glycolysis, as a good student, just note somewhere that glycolysis is equals to anaerobic respiration. So when you are asked to describe the process of anaerobic respiration, just describe what happens in the process that is called glycolysis. Then when you are told to describe the process of respiration, you describe glycolysis and you also describe the Krebs cycle. Now, we can now see the differences between Krebs cycle and glycolysis. We have already identified one difference. That glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm, but you realize that Krebs cycle occur in the matrix of the mitochondria. That is one major differences between the glycolysis and Krebs cycle. Now, keep following us, keep sending your questions. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. We are simplifying and demystifying biology in a greater extent. Now, let's see the differences between glycolysis and Krebs cycle. And the most important point that you want to emphasize on this area, the most point you want to emphasize as we give you the points is that in glycolysis, it occurs in the cytoplasm, while Krebs cycle occurs in the matrix of the mitochondria. Krebs cycle require oxygen, while oxygen is not required in glycolysis. As we have stated, occurs in the mitochondria, that is the Krebs cycle, and glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm. Then a lot of energy is produced in Krebs cycle because the food substance is completely broken down. That one gives us about 36 molecules of adenosine triphosphate, while glycolysis produces less energy. That is about 2 molecules of adenosine triphosphate because the food substance is partially broken down. Then the last comparison is that it involves complete breakdown of pyruvic acid into carbon dioxide, water, and energy, which is less harmful. Then we have the last point on glycolysis. There is incomplete breakdown of glucose into pyruvic acid. Now, that one brings us to the end of comparison between Krebs cycle and glycolysis. So from this point, as a student, you are able to answer this particular question, differentiate or give the differences between the Krebs cycle and glycolysis. Keep following us at KUTV. This show is Elimu Live. Welcome all. Let us learn together. Let us simplify biology. Let us all become doctors. Let us all score an airplane in this very simple subject as we are trying to simplify it here. Now, let's see the chart there. That's what we have been describing. We have there, that is glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid. And as you can see in animals, the pyruvic acid is broken down into lactic acid and energy. That chart represents anaerobic respiration. Then in plants, we have ethanol, also known as alcohol in another term, carbon dioxide, and energy. And that is an enzyme control reactions that occur in the cytoplasm. That is in plants. Then in animals, you have lactic acid and energy. Now, in Krebs cycle, when oxygen is availed, as we can see from this chart, the pyruvic acid is completely broken down into energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Now, when you get this chart or in an examination or when you observe this, you are supposed to understand glucose. When glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid, the process is, that is anaerobic respiration. When glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid, only 2 responses can be very correct. That is respiration, if the examiner is lenient enough, but the most appropriate answer, that is glycolysis and anaerobic respiration. So from that chart, we are able to see what takes place. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. Keep following us and let's simplify biology. Now let's move to the next concept. That is condition necessary to maintain the process of respiration in living cells. So for you to maintain energy productions, number 1, the cells must be provided with the glucose because glucose is the main respiratory substrate. Glucose is the main respiratory substrate that is being broken down to release energy. So the cells must be provided with glucose. Number 2, oxygen must be taken in to react with the glucose. The process of respiration involves breakdown of food substance chemically to release energy, and therefore oxygen must be taken in to break down the food substance into energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Now, number 3, there must be respiratory enzymes to catalyze reaction. Respiration is an enzyme-controlled reaction. Respiration is an enzyme-controlled reaction, and therefore, respiratory enzymes catalyze the rate of reaction. Then, number 4 is a favorable temperature should be maintained for efficient enzyme functioning. Each enzyme has a specific temperature that it works best to provide the desired results. And this temperature is known as optimum temperature. So each enzyme has an optimum temperature. Just like in human body, the optimum temperature is constant at 37 degrees. And that is why when you present yourself to any health facilities, the first or among the initial operations done by the nurses there and the doctors is to check the temperature. So temperature can indicate whether you are in normal health or you are in ill health. So optimum temperature must be provided or must be maintained for efficient enzyme functioning. Then number 5 is the end products of reactions, carbon dioxide, water, and energy must be constantly removed from the mitochondrion. Now this process, respiration, as a characteristic of living organism is interrelated or is related with excretion. Excretion is the separation, the process by which the body separates and eliminates harmful waste products from the body. Now, the carbon dioxide produced, if allowed to accumulate in the body tissues, will be harmful, and it may interfere with the optimum cell functions. For example, it may lead to a change in the pH of body fluids, and that will affect the body functions. Keep following us, Elimu Live at KUTV, as we simplify biology and learn to understand and to always excel. Now, having discussed that, the types of respiration, we are able to differentiate between anaerobic respiration and aerobic respiration. Now, I would like us to move to the next so that you're able to learn something. The next, where we want to discuss the applications, we have discussed the differences between glycolysis. Now let's move to applications. Yes, applications of anaerobic respiration. Applications of anaerobic respiration. Keep sending your comments, keep sending your inquiries. This is Elimu Live show at KUTV. Now, the first applications, as you can see in the notes there, we have baking industry. But to be precise as a student, so that you don't give general answers, just the point should be manufacture of bread. Because if you just say baking industry, in baking industry, when you are told to state a point, there can even be a driver who is distributing bread, or there is a CEO. So specifically mention now in what part of the industry requires the knowledge of anaerobic respiration. So number 1 is manufacture of bread. And it will interest you to know that when you buy a bread, if you hold a piece of bread, you'll see a lot of holes, tiny holes in the bread. Now, have you ever wondered, why do bread have tiny holes? Now, as a good student, it will bring to your mind that that's a clear indication that anaerobic respiration is taking place, leading to production of carbon dioxide. Now, as carbon dioxide escapes, that's when now we see the tiny holes. It indicates that carbon dioxide is being released. Then the next point is manufacture of alcoholic beverages. That is in the brewing industry, manufacturing of alcoholic beverages such as beer. But I would like to remind my students that the liver is one. When you take beer and alcohol and you destroy the liver, who is this person who is ready to die for you to give you the liver so that you live? So we are saying avoid taking drugs. The only thing you can enjoy with that good result is good health. Now, keep following us, keep sending your comments. I know we are highly benefiting at Elimu Live KUTV. Production of organic acids requires the knowledge of anaerobic respiration, and organic acids are like vinegar, citric acid, and butanoic acid. To prepare. Now, the last point is in the dairy industry, that is manufacture of milk products such as yogurt. Now, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm Richard Alam, a very competent, experienced teacher of biology and agriculture. Currently, I teach at Maranjao Junior Secondary School, that is in Murang'a South, but currently I reside in Nairobi. So as a student, anytime you send your question in biology, in agriculture, I'm always up to task to assist you to ensure that you realize your dream, one, of becoming a doctor, two, one, becoming more competent teacher like me. Now, above all, if you want to perform well in biology, always after a lesson like this, sit down on your own as a student and just pass through the points. And in a day, every day before you sleep, just answer even a question of 2 marks and sleep. If you do that every day, in a month, in a year, you will be the best student and you will always achieve your dream. Keep following Elimu Live at KUTV. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Let's keep learning. I'm Richard Alam. You can follow me at my Facebook or on YouTube. We can learn together at Veteran Alam Richard. Thank you so much, Elimu Live KUTV. Next time.
Are you an aspiring